Okay, this is the Q&A panel for Jacob Kainen. I'm super excited to have producer John Gann here because first off, we've never met in person. We've only met socially through social media. So we're
Right.
finally meeting together here for the first time. So excited. Lots to talk about. You and I have the connection with the film festival, of course. So I
hmm
want to ask you a pertinent question for today, especially in 2025, with film festivals changing and the way things are done nowadays. Do you think that we are headed in a better direction, or do you think maybe we should be tweaking
Oh,
how we do them?
that's a big question.
I know.
Um, yeah, I sort of feel that the future of festivals, is not in the way we've been doing it in the past.
Okay.
I the thing that festivals do best is to be tastemakers. I mean, to filmmakers, they feel like every film festival is exactly the same, but they're not. Every
Yeah.
film festival is unique. It's why a city can have a dozen or more because they each have a very specific audience and they each have a different way of selecting films and showing films. And I think that that's the beauty that festivals are these tastemakers. They curate content based on their aesthetic and their zeitgeist, and then they bring it to an audience who appreciates it. And a good programming team shows stuff that the audience know they know the audience wants to see,
Yep.
as well as stuff that they believe they have to see. And sometimes that's very different. Sometimes the films they have to see are very difficult and not necessarily the films that the audience wants to see, but usually they're very appreciative of it being
Yeah.
given that opportunity. Um, and I think it's using that curatorial skill is what's going to help festivals move forward. I'm still a huge proponent of online screenings. I know, I mean, I'd love to be in person, obviously, but there's an
Yeah.
audience that just doesn't want to go out anymore. And there's an audience that would never have gone to a physical festival, but loves to go to see um, and to see stuff online. And quite honestly, there are films as a programmer have to be seen cinematically, and there are
Yep.
films that you're like, this is perfectly fine on a small screen.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's hard for filmmakers sometimes when they're chosen for, let's say, an online screening versus an in-person screening that they feel slighted. But I actually think it's better. It means that the programmer knows their audience and knows the best way to get this film out to their audience and it gets the most people to see it. They might go, listen, I can program you at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday because that's the only time slot I have open. Or I could
Mhm.
put you on a Friday at 7 p.m. because I know that that online audience will want to watch you.
You betcha. Absolutely. I know that a lot of times we talk about, and in your particular case, you took your knowledge and wrote two books, not one, but two, Behind the Screens. And so you want to start a film festival. So I was just lecturing to a group of students the other day and encouraged them to start their own film festival. So if I were to pick your brain and say, okay, if someone happens to watch this interview, whether they're younger, older,
hmm
just love films, etc., bare bones, very bare bones. Where do you start to create a good festival?
Oh, you've got to find your curatorial voice. You have to figure out what you have what you have to offer as far as presentation of films.
Sure.
Um, that's the most important thing is to figure out and to figure out who that audience is and make sure that they're compatible. You might love, you know, horror musicals, but you might realize that you don't have anyone, you can't find a horror musical uh, audience.
Sure.
You don't have access to it. So that's probably not compatible to create a successful event. So that's the first thing is to figure out who you are and who your voice is about, and then whether you can find people who will follow you.
You bet. Okay. Now I know that so far you've written two projects, directed three, and you've been producer on five. So on the production side of things, please
Yep.
tell us a bit about what elements do you look for in a film before you decide to say, I'm going to put my backing behind it?
Oh, well, that's a good one. So, during pandemic, at the beginning of pandemic, when everything shifted, and I was under contract with about a dozen festivals to do consulting work, and that all dried up like in an afternoon when everyone had to cancel their event. And so I had to pivot real fast, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. It's like a month I did nothing, and then a dear friend of mine called me and said, "Listen, I know you haven't directed or produced in years, but I, I can connect you with a museum curator who's desperate to get a film made about an artist for a touring exhibition. Will you speak to them?" And I said, "Sure." And I knew nothing about the artist. I knew nothing, and but I figured, what the heck? And then I found out who it was. It was Alma Thomas, who I have grown to just completely love. And so I said, "Sure, yeah, I'll do it." And so that was the first film I had made in probably 15 years. um, and I decided not to direct it. I wanted to produce it. I knew really good directors, but the beautiful thing about running a film festival is you get to meet lots of people, right?
Yeah.
And when I started doing film festivals, one of the reasons I did it was because I realized that I was at I had films and played a bunch of festivals, and I realized I was a good director, but I wasn't a great director.
Mm.
But what I was a great connector. And so if I could connect great directors and great product with other films and other people to get them further along in their career, that was a much better use of my skill set than me trying to be that guy. So when it came time to make this film, I realized I'm not going to direct it. I now know hundreds of directors I could choose from, and I knew exactly the one I wanted, and called her up and said, "You're making this movie." And she said, "Okay." And I said, "Listen, I'm going to produce this in a very professional way. You're not going to do what you normally do as a writer producer, in which you do like almost everything. You're going to direct. You're going to create this story, and you're going to move it forward. But all the intricacy, all the rights, and all the research, and all the other stuff, I'm going to do. You have to do it." And
Okay.
she was shocked by it, and it was the first time she ever made a film like that. And it was like liberating to her. She could completely focus on the storytelling. um, while I was making that film, I was contacted by the estate of Jacob Kainen, um, who wanted a film about him. And I was like, okay. And then I realized something clicked, and I realized, oh, I have an entire series in here of 20th century Washington, D.C. based artists. And so I actually have two more in the pipeline. One is actually in pre production, one hopefully will be contracted soon. And I have a fifth that's in the pipeline. So this is my new niche.
Mm.
And I'm loving it. And the key is, how do I make five films that are very different from one another,
Yeah.
but that I can screen three of them together in a 90-minute show and they work?
Yeah. In fact, you brought up Elma Thomas, so and I know I've screened it before amongst
Mhm.
many others. So please tell everybody, what was that film about, and where did it end up getting a distributor, etc.?
Yeah. It's yes. So the Alma Thomas, A Life in Color movie was made to go with this traveling exhibition of her work that went to four different museums around the U.S. And then it was available to every school-aged kid in Washington, D.C. for the past 5 years. It's distributed. I believe it's on Canopy
Yeah.
and a few other services. You can also go to our website and watch it off of paid Vimeo. It's done very well, and it played a bunch of festivals. It won a bunch of festivals. So that was kind of cherry on top of it. It didn't need to go to festivals, but I wanted to put it out there because I thought her story was so interesting and her work is so good. The Kaden film is a very different movie,
Yeah.
different feel, different everything, and it's being used primarily by the gallery that represents him to sort
Mm.
of find. It was made specific. Well, the Alma Thomas movie was made specifically to go with an exhibition and sort of to explain her life and give a kind of overview of her work to people at the exhibition to to pause and take 20 minutes out and watch something.
Nice.
The Kanan movie was made specifically to target what we're calling young collectors, people in their late 20s to early 50s who are starting to collect real art and not just stuff they buy at Home Goods,
Mm.
and to better understand the artist and why what a modern connection to him is.
Gotcha.
Whether it's social justice or sort of being bucking the trends and doing everything the opposite of everyone else, or the whole McCarthy business and being fingered, etc. So it was made for a very different type of purpose.
I bet. In addition to all the other talents you have, I never knew this, but apparently you were the voice in a film, Animation Hotline. How did that happen?
Well, Dustin Grella, who's an incredible animator, had a project he was doing for a few years in which You basically called a voicemail system and you left a like a confession or a message, and then he would animate it. And so he picked one of mine to animate. So it was very cute.
Very, very cute.
He's a
Yes.
great animator and has worked on lots and lots of products. He used to show films that I used to program in festivals, and he's moved on to other bigger stuff now.
Very cool. And then if he didn't do enough, you are also the founder of DC Shorts and also a founding board member of Film Festival Alliance. To those that are
Uh,
watching that have no idea about either of these wonderful entities, please tell us more about both.
Sure. So DC Shorts it still exists. I haven't been involved in the past 6 or 7 years, but
Okay.
it was at one point the largest short film festival in the country. It's not anymore, but it was significant. It was I created it after I had made some films that played festivals around the world, and I realized that I didn't really like festivals. They weren't about what was important to me, which was about meeting other filmmakers and
Yeah.
connecting to audiences. And most big festivals were about parties and money and sponsors, and so I wanted to create something that was sort of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I created DC Shorts. And then the Film Festival Alliance was created uh, out of necessity. We needed to professionalize what we do. There's thousands of festivals, and maybe a few hundred are active, whether it's active in some sort of community, whether it's we used to have a big Facebook group, or whether we had a conference every year. The festivals was sort of an afterthought. I'm like, we need to make this to the forefront. And so we created the Festival Alliance to sort of professionalize festival work, and to create resources for film festival people to
Okay.
better do their job, but also to sort of educate filmmakers about what festivals are really about. Film festival people stay in the business for years, so they never really change. But every year, the filmmakers change, and they don't really. They come into it and they know nothing. They weren't really taught anything in film school because film schools don't really teach about film festivals, and so. They make their final project in film school and they send it out and they get rejected and they just think all film festivals suck and they don't really understand anything behind it. And it's really up to festivals to sort of spend the time to educate. But it's exhausting because it's the same education every year to a new group of people. And so the
Yep.
one thing the Film Festival Alliance can do is provide resources to make that easier.
Yes, you betcha. Okay, Jacob, let's talk about the film
Okay, let's talk
Jacob
about Jacob.
Kainen. Okay, first off, because we do not have the pleasure of Mark Christopher Covino being here, who is the
Yep,
director, tell us a bit about how he got on
it's
board with the
fine.
project. And there's the
Uh,
dog.
there's my dog. Yeah, he's getting a little itsy. Um, you off, buddy. So yeah, I've known Mark for many years. Again, he was the director who had films in the festival circuit, and that's how I met him years ago.
Okay.
Uh, when this project came to me, um, I knew Mark was looking for a project. I also knew that Mark's father was an artist, sort of an underappreciated artist,
Okay.
and I had always wanted to work with Mark. So I said, "Do you want to make this film?" And I mean, he like I knew nothing about Jacob Kanan, so I sent him some materials, and he wrote back. He goes, "There's a really interesting story here." I said, "Yeah, I think the guy had a really extraordinary life,
Oh,
and his work is fascinating, and his work is so many different styles, which is why I think it's really interesting." So he agreed to do it. So contracted him, and yeah,
and
took
here
over
you
from there.
are.
Yeah.
This is completed obviously much earlier in 2025. I'm curious to ask because he seems to embody what I would call a true artisan. He lived and breathed his art up until the day he
Oh,
passed away, which was
yeah.
in 2001. Um, I'd like to ask the question of when audiences are watching this, what are some of the things you're hearing from them about the actual film?
You know, it's with a lot of artists, people know bits and pieces of a story, but don't know the whole story. And so when
Yeah.
they get a bigger picture of what this guy's life was like, a lot of stuff really falls into place. And because Jacob had so many different styles, he was painting from the very early figurative work to the very end, super abstract conceptual pieces. Um, if you only know about one era, you might be kind of fixated on that work, but to understand that
Sure.
there's a bigger breadth to it, and how he went from really literal figurative work to super abstract, and how that those abstract shapes are really reminiscent of some of the stuff he did in his very figurative work. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. Oh,
And of
sure
course,
it is.
and then how he used his art as sort of protest, like how after the McCarthy business, he kind of changed his style again, and how one of the reasons he kept on changing his style was so that he wouldn't be with the crowd and doing what everyone else was doing, but also, I mean, he had to sort of hide, kind of paint and see, not really in secret, but not publicly for a while, and so it gave him the opportunity to do something opposite what everyone else is doing,
Sure.
which is hard as a gallery, and as to sort of say, here's a guy who's bucking the system, and was doing stuff 10 years later than everyone else, or 10 years earlier than everyone else. um, it's kind of hard to put him into specific eras. I mean, I think that some historians would love to put him in the Washington Color School, but he really didn't want to be
Yeah.
part of at all. Did not want to be part of the Color School, because the Color School was about staining and big fields of color. And while he was a great colorist, he had no interest in that whatsoever. To him, it was all about the paintbrush and the
Sure.
strokes.
And for documentary filmmaking, a lot of times I think one of the biggest challenges is how did you sit down and decide such a large life? How do we take it and encapsulate it only into 20 some minutes, right? How did that
Yeah.
happen?
That's always the toughest part, because this easy could have been an hour, right? And
Yeah.
the Alma Thomas film could have been 2 hours.
Yes.
It's just there's so much material. The key was to figure out what were the key chapters, what made the most sense, and what were the pivotal turning points.
Yeah.
So his turning points were his art school, his having to come to DC, his the McCarthy business, and then meeting Ruth, and sort of been given the freedom to sort of just be a full-time artist and do whatever he wants.
Right.
So, we sort of based on that, and then based on what works we thought were best represented by that,
Yeah.
and what works we had access to, which is a whole other issue. And then, uh, yeah, so that really kind of frames out the story. And then, quite honestly, I mean, we filmed a dozen people or 15 people for this film, and we only used eight,
Oh,
um,
wow.
because in the end, people were saying great stuff, but it wasn't necessarily stuff that would fit in well with the rest of the story that we were trying to tell.
I understand. I
So,
do. I
and
get it.
that's part of documentary filmmaking. You interview someone for an hour, and you use 45
Yep.
seconds of what they say, because you're trying to get them to, you're trying to tell a story that's succinct and that's uniquely told.
Sure. And also within the course of the film, you were working with individuals who are close to him. So my question is did they have special input or did they come to you and say, we want certain things or certain reflections of Jacob?
Um, no, actually, the estate was very good and didn't put any real parameters on us about what we had. Just as
Nice.
so, um, we knew pretty we knew pretty early on that it was going to be a piece about his life and how his work was affected by his life, as opposed to a film I'm working on now, which is really about the work and how his work was affected by his life.
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay.
it's sort of a flip side of that.
Sure.
Um, and so, but we knew that for this piece, we needed to talk about Jacob and his circumstances. And part of that is we have to explain the depression, and we have to explain
Yeah.
McCarthyism, and we have to, so there are a bunch of concepts that we have to sort of, we do through newsreels, but we have to explain, because we realize that some audiences just don't know what the context of this is. What
Oh, you
is
bet.
the depression? You
Sure.
know, we're living through McCarthyism now. We just don't, we don't call it that because we don't have McCarthy. But, some people don't even know that that existed before.
Hmm.
So,
And we also don't want to forget to talk about the obvious, which is from a technical standpoint, watching this, obviously flipping back and forth between narrative and, of course, the setups and the way I was just the facial movements and how you put all of that together.
mm.
How complex was that for you?
Full disclaimer: the voice that we use in the film is the AI generated voice of Jacob. So
Ah,
we were
okay.
given a box of tapes,
Okay.
and some video that was not very clear, and the audio was kind of unusable.
Ah,
But we also were given hundreds or dozens of really in-depth interviews,
sure.
as well as audio recordings that we could listen to, but we couldn't. I sent them to Skywalker Ranch, like they couldn't clean it up. I'm like, if they can't clean it up, no one's going to clean it up.
Yeah.
Um, and so uh, it was about, so we made the decision to sort of generate his voice by using some clear audio we had. And remarkably, the first time we played it to his son, he was shocked. He was like, "Oh, my father's so brilliant." I said, "No, this is AI generated," and he was shocked. Um, but we knew that if we wanted to use that voice, we couldn't show him in reality. So we decided to show
Okay.
this animated version of Jacob. So
Got
we
it.
based it on some video. Evidently, sometime in the 80s, Ruth had commissioned a filmmaker to make a film about him. He was filmed for like 3 days. He looks like a deer in headlights. He just looks so
Oh,
incredibly uncomfortable. And so the plug was pulled on the project, and those are the videotapes we received. And so we took some of that, and then was able to basically again use an AI to sort of match what he was saying to lips, and then kind of superimpose that, and to make it look more real, we added we it was animated to sort of make that all work out. And to me,
understood.
it works fine because it's not really Jacob saying these. I mean, these are things he actually said. These are actual words that came out of his mouth,
Yeah.
um, just in a much clearer audio. But we wanted to use this animated version of him to sort of dispel reality.
Yeah, because visually it looks, it's just wonderful. And then the interviews and combined with all the paintings, it's exquisite. I mean, it's
Thank you.
exquisite filmmaking. I mean, there's no other way to put it besides that. Um, Now, how much longer is it going to be in the circuit, or are you just done and where's it headed now?
So it's mostly done for the circuit at this point. The
Okay.
estate was very picky about festivals, and so I
Oh,
handpicked about a dozen festivals for it to go to. More because they're festivals I knew that would appreciate it, or audiences I knew that would
yeah,
appreciate it.
sure.
Um, but that wasn't their goal with this film. So this again will be distributed to schools and academically. It will be made available through my distributor to educational institutions and museums around the world.
Okay.
It's already in the hands of museums that have Kainens in their collections. Um, and hopefully they use it. It's on there on the Jacob Kainen website, and hopefully it will be used more often. But
You
I don't have
bet.
any control of. I don't. I had a little more control over the Thomas film. This one, I don't have much control of the what happens.
I gotcha. Before I ask you what you have coming up, if Jacob were alive today, what do you think he'd say about your film?
I would hope that he would appreciate it. I'm not sure he would like it. He was very humble, and so I'm not quite sure he would. I'm sure he would find fault in portions of it, because from what I've been told, he was very particular. Um, but I would think he would appreciate it and appreciate the sort of the grand overarching scale of it.
Hmm.
So
Nice. Very
I hope
nice.
so. So.
So tell us, what do you got in the can next? What's going on for Jim
So I'm
after
working on a
this?
film. Yeah, so I'm working on a film about an artist named Andrew Bucci, who's evidently one of Mississippi's finest artists,
Okay.
greatest contemporary artists. And he had lived in DC for about 35 years. So that's sort of the DC connection there. And so that we're
Okay.
filming in February and will be delivered by September. And then I'm in pre-production on a film about um, William Christian Barry, who
Hmm.
is a well-known, he's known mostly for his photography work,
Okay.
but he was a very skilled painter and illustrator, or not really illustrator. He did a lot of drawings, ink drawings. They're kind of abstract.
Hmm.
Um, and so he's had lots of museum exhibitions for his photography work, and so but the other work is sort of less known. So this film is going to concentrate more on that work and more
Okay.
in his connection to his family and how his family life affected his work and how his work affected his family life, which is a story that hasn't really been told about him. So I'm working on that, and then I have like one or two other artists that are possibly in the background for films in 26, 27, 28. So I seem to
Nice.
be busy, so it's
Yeah,
good.
that's
So
awesome.
it's fun. Yeah, no, and for each of these I'm picking different directors, which is fun because I get to work with different people. I think
Yeah.
Mark's going to do another film for me. Um, I would love Sherry to do another film for me, but I think she's so busy. She's finishing up her documentary about the LA women's arts movement
Ah,
of the 70s, and so that's almost done.
okay.
Uh, so yeah, so yeah, I've always got projects, right? So
That's awesome
it's
and
fun.
exciting. That's great. Tell everybody
Thanks.
the website where they can find the film. It's jacobkanan.com.
JacobKanan.com. Yep,
That's
and
what I
it's
thought.
right there on the main page. There's a button to click to go see the film, so it's free to watch. So yeah, enjoy.
That's awesome. So, three things I want to finish off with here. First off, congratulations on all your success. You really are very inspiring and motivating. I don't know if you know
Thank
that
you.
or not, but just looking at everything, it's like, wow, that's amazing. That's
I
number one.
appreciate that.
Number two, thank you and incredibly humbled and grateful just to be able to show this and to get audiences to see it. I am so humbled and thankful because it truly, again, it's just exquisite. I can't say enough
Thank
about
you.
this.
I really appreciate that.
That's true. And number three, I'm excited to say, yes, you're up for Best Dramatic Short Film over 16 minutes long. So I'm
Oh,
super
yay.
excited for that nomination. That's awesome.
Excellent.
I wish I could tell you if you're winning, but I don't know yet because it's not Sunday. The awards will be
That's
on
fine.
Sunday, so I'm excited about that. But I'm just incredibly grateful just to have you in this space again. It's been absolutely wonderful.
It's my pleasure. And again, I can only pick a few festivals to send this to. I had to send it to you because
Aw,
this is to me this is an important outlet. So
thank you very
thank
much.
you for picking it. I really
Oh,
appreciate that.
let me just stop.